thank each of you for sharing your stories. It's so important for us to hear the real-life stories of workers who are on the job site and for us to better understand what you go through day in and day out. Kudos, Shirley, for the work that you're doing to help women get more involved in the construction trade. And certainly I am sensitive to the issue that you raised when you said sometimes it's harder for a woman to bring up these issues because even though we're brothers and sisters in our unions, sometimes there's still some stereotypes that still exist out there, and showing your toughness and showing you can handle the job, and sometimes that doesn't allow a person the flexibility to also be complaining on the job site when they should be complaining and raising issues regarding safety. So I really appreciate you being here today and sharing those stories. One, I can't even imagine dangling at that height. It's beyond my comprehension.
I know,
you can, right?
Yeah.
You said you brought your harness
Yes.
and your gear there.
Yes.
Does your employer supply that gear for you?
Yes, they do. I get a brand new safety bag on every new job that I go to if I leave the old company. If there's over 87 different companies that are affiliated with Local 1. If I leave one company and I go to another company, I am issued a brand new safety bag with a brand new harness, a brand new lanyard, and a brand new grabber every time, and other safety equipment is already established for me in the bag. I brought the bag with me, but I didn't want to have to go through every little thing in there.
Okay. And is that having the employer provide that safety equipment, is that something that's negotiated through the collective bargaining agreement, do you know?
No.
Do you know if non-union contractors supply the same type of equipment?
I'm sure they don't.
Okay.
I'm sure they don't because, unfortunately, we've had to install elevators on half union and half non-union jobs. And I've seen people, other workers, I don't want to be specific about their trades, but they weren't elevator workers, but they were on 16, 24-foot ladders, unhooked up. And we know automatically that's a big no-no. We would never let another coworker stand on a ladder when we already know there's a 6-foot rule that you should be tied off if you're on a ladder more than 6 foot. And these are just things, I'll go back to my training again. They teach you this right away in the beginning. Forget about, having to know these things when you do take your OSHA 10 and you pass it, because it's not something that you just sit there online and you can go through in 2-4 hours. It says 10 hours, but it's actually longer when you do it online. I've had to do it at the union and I've had to renew it online, and it actually took me about 16 hours because it times you out. So you could sit there and attempt to try to go through the whole thing, but it won't let you. So you kind of develop a sense of repetitiveness when you are in school and you're around your coworkers and you have to do this, you have to be prepared for that. We have a JHA every day about the topics, our tasks for the day, and it just complements the union. It makes me know that I'm in a good place, I'm around good workers, and we're all going to look out for one another from the start of the day to the end of the day.
And looking out for one another, that's what being brothers and sisters is
Oh,
all
absolutely,
about.
absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Juan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Michael Halprin, Marketing Development Organizer from the International Union of Elevator Constructors, Local Number 1. And Wendy Webb. And also, we'll also have Wendy Webb, Mason Tenders Training Fund.
Good afternoon, chairpersons, and I'm familiar with all of you. I hope you're familiar with me. I mean, when we see each other around the halls of Albany, it's always been a good relationship, and I thank you all for that. Something you may or may not know about me is, though prior to taking the staff position I now have, the local one, I am an elevator mechanic by trade. And when I first got in the industry in 1983, I had to participate in the education and training that was provided at that time and is still provided today. I entered the elevator industry in December of '83 as a helper or apprentice. I passed our 4-year education and training program and then passed a comprehensive exam to reach the position of mechanic or journeyman. In my years in the field, I have worked for such employers as Otis Elevator, Gotham Elevator, and Ace Elevator. All were responsible employers who participate in a state-approved apprentice and training program. One was a large shop employing hundreds of workers in the city and over 1,000 in the state. One was a mid-sized shop and employed about 100 workers, and the other was a small shop employing less than a dozen workers. The cost of the education and training was, and still is, well within the reach of contractors of all sizes. On my first day in the industry, I received a hard hat and a safety belt. Over time, safety belts have evolved into harnesses, which Juan just showed you a few minutes ago. I almost immediately received a bundle of course material in the mail. It was all material about how to work safely in the elevator industry. I began to work alongside a mechanic who had previously been through the education program. He showed me the practical application of the material that had been in the books. Over the next 4 years, I would enter the classroom of my apprenticeship program. I would learn the skills that would make me a competent elevator mechanic that can keep my workplace, those around me, and the general public safe. In my first year, I was taught the basic mechanics of the elevator industry and was taught such skills as stacking steel rails, loading thousands of pounds of counterweights, and how to use those counterweights to properly balance an elevator. Did P&W Elevator, the elevator contractor at 156 Hope Street in Brooklyn, participate in such training? When Aaron Modan was killed at 156 Hope Street on October 2nd, 2015, reports came from the equipment manufacturer that the car was not properly balanced. It was also reported that the brake was well out of adjustment. The company said to me, and I quote, "It seems like they don't know how to use feeler gauges." I'm glad that I was responsibly taught how to balance a car, how to adjust brakes, and how to use proper tools such as feeler gauges to adjust brakes. The responsible employers that I worked for never had a passenger fatality. P&W Elevator also did the maintenance at 41-90 Frame Place in Flushing. In August of 2014, only 14 months prior to the passenger fatality on Hope Street, a man was killed entering an elevator at Frame Place. The car had run with the doors open. Accounts would reveal that there had been several reports of the elevator having the ability to run with the doors open, and that several calls had been placed and responded to by the elevator company. My training had taught me that if there was the slightest hint of an elevator being able to run with the doors open, the car is to be left shut down. The training that I had received to keep my workplace safe and to develop my skills could have kept Hong Wang alive. The next phase of my training was basic electricity. I learned things like Ohm's law, electrical power theory, to help control electric elevator motors and the various components. I learned generator theory and applications. I learned about rectifiers and transformers. I hated this course. Despite getting good grades throughout all of my schooling, this course gave me fits. 1 night per week, 4 hours per night for over 30 weeks. I hated the class. I studied hard and grew to learn it and passed the exams. Just last week, Igor Begin at the NYCHA Housing Authority project over in Coney Island Houses, he was killed. He was killed. He was an elevator worker who does not get exposed to the same education and training that our people do. I spoke with folks who were at the site. They said that the smell of Igor's burnt hair as they entered the machine room was unsettling, but not nearly as unsettling as the sight of Igor's head having been electrocuted and glued to the fuses. The electrical current ran through his head. The real trauma was to his brain and his heart. Had Igor received comparable training to the training that I had received, he could be alive today. These days, the last course of our training is solid-state electronics. However, when I was in school, our last year of training was to study circuit tracing. I was pleased to find out that I was good at it. After struggling through basic electricity, I was able to understand how current needed to flow through a great number of circuits to get to that place where a brake picks and an up or a down relay fires and a vertical city is made possible. As I learned how circuits worked, I also learned that at times, as an elevator mechanic, I may need to bypass circuits in order to fix a problem. I learned about door lock circuits, which tell the controls that the doors are closed and the elevator is safe to run. I learned about slowdown and stopping circuits so that I could control an elevator coming into a floor. I learned how to keep myself and those around me and the elevator riding public safe. I can't help but wonder if Deborah Jordan would be able to walk today if the contractor that maintained the elevators at Downstate Medical Center had chosen to provide state-approved education and training to their workers. On Christmas Day in 2010, Deborah Jordan went to Downstate to visit a friend. As Miss Jordan entered the elevator took off, trapping her leg and her hand in the door. The elevator mechanic had bypassed the door locks. Deborah Jordan's leg and hand would strike floor after floor as the elevator shot up 7 stories. Her wrist bones and femur were shattered. She has lost the use of her leg. In 2011, the mechanic in that case was indicted. I thought, wouldn't it have been easier to educate and train him? This whole mess would have been avoided. In February of 2015, for the first time in United States history, an elevator mechanic was found guilty for his role in an elevator incident. That was the mechanic in that incident. Upon receiving his 3-month jail sentence, the remorseful mechanic stated that when he got out, he wanted to relocate in Florida. Florida is one of 34 states that license elevator mechanics. Upon his release, the mechanic could not move there and make a living as an elevator mechanic. When I met with this mechanic 2 months ago, he informed me he still resides in New York and that he is working as an elevator mechanic. There was no license to suspend or revoke, no avenue to mandate training before re-entry into the industry as a mechanic, and we are currently trying to get him with a responsible employer who participates in state-approved education and training. He stated that had he had access to education and training, he feels that Christmas Day 2010 would have been a different day. When I spoke last month with the Brooklyn assistant DA that convicted him, he stated that had the mechanic been educated and trained, that Christmas Day 2010 would have been a different day. So I thank you for your attention to the elevator safety law that was discussed earlier and that is passed through the Labor Committee. And I strongly urge you to please talk to your colleagues and please help us get through the other committees and to the floor of the Assembly. Next Wednesday up in Albany will be quote-unquote elevator safety day. Our apprenticeship folks will be up there with equipment in the corridor by the elevators in the well. And it'd be great to see you all stop by and actually see what goes into the education and training. And I also want to state that our industry isn't alone. You know, throughout the construction industry, our work interfaces with the life of everyday New Yorkers. You know, if we're removing asbestos, if we're painting with the wrong type of paint, if we're providing power and lights, if we're not trained to do that properly, that can have repercussions after the fact that actually brings the general public into play. So these safety measures are very important, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayo, Mrs. Titus, and Mr. Brosnan. My name is Wendy Webb. I'm a field coordinator for Local 79's apprenticeship program. Also been a union member for the past 28 years. I worked in the field as well, 13 of those 28 years. What I would like to say is we're the general building laborers, and we haven't always had an apprenticeship program, so I've seen the results of the before and the after. I was a part of the union when we didn't have an apprenticeship program. So it was about who you knew. They hired you. You had to be a quick learner. No one really told you what to do. You know, if you were lucky, you got somebody that tried to teach you what they know. Not that it was right or wrong, but it was how they did things. And I was lucky. You know, I believe one of the reasons why I haven't been injured was because of the fact prior to me going into the construction industry, I also was prior military. So one of the things I always kept with me was stay alert, stay alive. So I paid attention. I always realized that I could have been in an unsafe situation, but not everybody was as fortunate. I've seen accidents. I lost a brother, a union brother of mine, I believe in 1999, who was considered a scaffold builder. You know, he wasn't just a worker on a scaffold, but he mastered it. And And unfortunately, what I've come to realize is that usually accidents don't happen as soon as you get on a job. You're more conscious of your safety. It usually happens when we become complacent 10 years later, and I experienced that. 10 years later, I felt I didn't need a hard hat because I'm working inside of an occupied building, and I was pushing a baker, and it was a spray bottle that I had on top of the baker actually hit me in the head. And thank God it was just a spray bottle because it felt like a block. And thank God that it didn't do any damage, but it also took me back to, okay, this is something you should have known better. Long story short, after my 13 years of working in the field, I worked with the union. I worked as a business agent, then I went into training as a coordinator for our apprenticeship program, which was up and running, I believe, in 1996. It got up and running, so 2002, I went there to make sure that most of our members who came in our industry would go through that process. And what I will say about it is I do see a difference. For one, you do have a safer environment. And not only do we train our apprentices, but we also train our members, like myself, people who weren't through apprenticeship programs. And because of that, I do see less fatalities. I also see, and this was hard for me to digest, sitting in a classroom when we had a school and now we're going to school, we're taking classes, and me and my brothers and sisters were laughing at the instructors and the things they were teaching us because we knew that wasn't our reality on a job site. And the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, I'm walking home and I'm saying to myself, what do you do with this information now? We were saying if we go to work and do this, they're going to fire us. They're going to get out of here. You either do it or you get leave, right? So I had to come up with something. I said, because now I have something, and it made me conscious. And my responsibility is to go home every night. I go to work to get paid, not to die. So truth of the matter is, I said, I have to find a way to implement it and have them embrace it as well. So I never refused not to do anything I felt was unsafe, even though I learned the right way to do it. But what I did do was ask them, could I have the time to change it and correct it before I did the work or task that they asked me. And as someone who trains our members now, that's what I teach them. We teach you the right way to do things, and I let everyone know there's many ways of doing things, but there's only one right way to doing it. And at the end of the day, the information we receive brings us to a consciousness, and not just for ourselves, but for our brothers and sisters around us. And like Jessica mentioned earlier, yes, women may feel a little less likely to speak up because they may look like, well, you don't belong here. But the truth of the matter is, our union brothers speak up with us. We sit in the classes together, and we know that if we let a contractor divide us, then we're open for anything. So if I'm getting ready to do something, or my fellow brother or sister, and I see that it's incorrect, I would say, wait a minute, let's fix this. I don't think you should be doing that. We also have union shop stewards on our jobs who are the eyes and ears for our organization. And if we felt like we will be penalized because of a safety issue that we felt was unsafe, and they wanted us to work in it, we would pretty much go to our shop steward and have them advocate for us because they have an added protection. I wanted to also share with you that Joseph, I believe his name was Joseph Kavanis, he mentioned that there was protection for union workers, and to some extent, they make sure we have our benefits, we get our medical, they make sure our wages are right, but they have the right to hire and fire. So on that note, sometimes members are afraid to speak up, and that's why it's good to have a union job where there is a shop steward on site who will advocate for you because they are less likely to be fired. They were appointed by our business agents and business managers, so they are there to advocate for us. It gives us that extra protection so you don't feel threatened, and that's what you don't see on non-union jobs. So I will say that. As far as training, it goes a long way, and it's not just about getting it during your apprenticeship, but even being retrained after. Even college students and professors and stuff, they all go back for extra education because in life things change. So our members do as well, and ironically, you would think laborers, they're not really smart people. They don't care about school. But believe it or not, every Friday night, our classes are filled. And on Friday nights at all nights, I'm like, do you guys have a life? But truth of the matter is, it's about their livelihoods.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sure.
So I guess what we've gathered from this, and it's a very common denominator here, is that education, safety training, and the apprenticeship programs is what works, is what's really keeping our industry, our folks that are in this industry, safe and coming home at night. And I think that it's a startling statistic, again, and that you pointed out that someone can be convicted here in the state of New York and still be operating as an elevator operator here after that tragedy, and we still can't get the proper training for that person to be in a company that is going to be responsible enough to do the right thing to keep the people in the city of New York that are using these elevators safe, but more importantly, their workers properly trained and safe as well. And I think that that's one of the things that I think that I'm taking away, and I think everyone here is taking away, is that the great importance of safety training, and that these apprenticeship programs are really working and having an effect on the industry. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time out to come here and testify.
Ditto on all of that. Mike, your testimony really put it all together, I think, where you gave examples of exactly what the training is all about for folks who work with elevators. And the realization that it's electrical work, it's mechanical work, and you need training in both of those areas. And if you don't get that training, then you're increasing the risk of an injury or an unfortunate fatality, as exampled in your testimony. Juxtaposing that with the Elevator Safety Act, which we have passed a number of times and continue to work on, but making sure that people are certified, have licenses, and we're not doing that just as to add an extra burden on either the contractors or the workers. We're doing that because we want to make sure that they know what they're doing in a dangerous field. So I thank you for your testimony and kind of putting it together with real examples in a particular industry, and so that was helpful. And Wendy, I liked what you talked about with and making a comparison between your experience without having the apprenticeship training and your experiences after that was offered for other workers. But I think you honed in on something that's really important, and that is we do the initial training to help people learn the skill, but also to understand the best way to do it from a safety standpoint. But the constant retraining, the constant recertification in your case, the constant making sure that people stay abreast of the changes in the technology, the changes in the work sites. And so the two of you just made it really real for me. And I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.